Hey, thanks for checking out Wage Slave Creative. I'm Tom Neiman, and I've been thinking a lot lately about artificial intelligence or AI. And a lot of what I hear, whether it's a conversation that I overhear or if it's a conversation that I'm a part of, from folks who are on the creative side, or even those who maybe are not, maybe folks that are in STEM related industries or medical fields or what have you, a lot of people are expressing concerns about artificial intelligence. And there's a lot of really valid reasons for that concern. There's going to be likely job losses, at least for a period of time, as we transition into kind of this new world where artificial intelligence plays a more significant role in our society. But when it comes from the standpoint of creatives, folks that are writing, painting, sculpting, creating things from their own intellect, from their own imagination, vision, or observations, these folks oftentimes will have a very visceral response to artificial intelligence and thoughts related to the integration of artificial intelligence into their fields. I've seen artists, visual artists mostly, who have actually viscerally responded to this idea with the use of explicit language and putting down folks who even try and wrestle or grapple with the idea of leveraging this technology in their art practice. In addition to that, we've had whole industries come to a halt. We had the Writers Guild actually go on strike in large part due to concerns and controls that they wanted to have implemented from a collective bargaining perspective to help protect creatives from the potential negative impacts that artificial intelligence might have on their industry. And that's all understandable. And more broadly speaking, from a societal standpoint, we definitely should be thinking about this. In the very narrow scope from which I'm looking at it, really has to do in my role as really a part time creative. Now, when it comes to artificial intelligence, I think there is permanent value available to creatives through the use of artificial intelligence. And I think it could be done, it could be achieved ethically without spoiling the work, without spoiling our creativity. And here's how. I think if we approach it the right way, we can use artificial intelligence in a way, especially the long language format chat bots, if you will, like Chat GPT or what have you. I think we have the opportunity to improve our thinking. And I think we could do so in two key ways. One, we can improve upon our questions. Now, even predating this technology revolution that we've lived through, multi-step technology revolution that we've lived through, with the electrification of our society, the internet, personal computers, supercomputers in our pockets, and now artificial intelligence. Throughout that transition, and even prior to that transition, the quality of our questions ultimately have really had a very significant impact on our success as creatives. So the quality of our questions can be improved. Our ability to ask effective questions can be sharpened through the use of artificial intelligence. And we'll give some examples here throughout this brief discussion. The second way with which artificial intelligence can help improve our thinking overall is by sharpening our critical thinking capabilities. So, with these long language format models, we will actually get almost an instant response to any question or prompt that we feed it. And that's kind of cool. It's a little alarming, and that's a big part of the alarm that we're feeling with regards to artificial intelligence potentially maybe eating all of our jobs. But despite that, there's a sign there, there's feedback that we can use to evaluate using our internal compass, using our subconscious, our imagination, and our critical thinking skills within the executive parts of our brain function. We can analyze those responses, compare it to our life experience, and ask ourselves if it rings true. We could take it a level deeper and do research, old school. We can go to the library. You could go on your favorite old school search engine and look for original sources that might either support the thesis that's being provided through the response from artificial intelligence or refutes it. See, the value isn't inherent in what artificial intelligence says in its responses to our questions. The real long term value is inherent to our response to the response delivered by artificial intelligence. And that sounds a little convoluted, but I think that's where the long term value exists for us as creatives. And sometimes where I feel like I've been successful in using the feedback provided by artificial intelligence, I've asked myself some simple questions like, am I agreeing with this response a little too quickly? Does this feel too easy? If I slow down and something sounds polished, maybe really polished but empty, if I'm not able to actually locate supporting facts that align with the information that's presented through AI, that can serve as an indication that a lot of additional research might be necessary in order to conclude whether or not to use the insights provided by artificial intelligence. And in addition to that, I'll ask questions like, okay, is this helping me smooth over a difficult decision that should actually be a hard one for an ethical reason or because of some of the anticipated pain that the actual decision will cause either for myself or somebody else around me, or because it cheapens the work that I'm doing in some way. If it seems too easy, it's usually a red flag. Maybe we want to take this response with a grain of salt. I think because we've all experienced this in some way, shape, or form when we're trying to pull together some sort of creative work. Quite often, good creative work stays unresolved for longer periods of time than other works that maybe aren't as good in the long term. Those paintings where you've had to work through some difficult challenges from a design standpoint or a color theory standpoint or from a subject matter perspective, or those paintings that you've had to scrape off and start all over from scratch after you've been working on them for a while. Those articles or books or chapters that you've had to revise multiple times, um, and submit multiple edits for, quite often are going to be the best things that you'll ever write, or creative things that you'll ever do. Now, if the use of artificial intelligence erases that process related experience as a creative, I think that too is a potential red flag. Now, for people working full time, this matters more than we care to admit. When you're a creative who is working full time or part time and you have limited windows of opportunity to create, and you need to be really careful in how you budget your time, easy fixes might seem really appealing. Now, most of us, meanwhile, don't have, in this situation, most of us that are working full time that are also creatives, don't have some of the things that full time artists might have access to because they've built the infrastructure out of necessity more than anything else. We won't have access to critique groups or mentors that are available at those moments when we're doing our work. Artificial intelligence won't serve as a replacement for community. However, it could serve as a foothold or a holding place where we can get a little bit of feedback and keep our momentum going until we have access to our support community. It could serve as a placeholder essentially until real conversation with real human beings is available to us. Now, there are risks. If you let it replace judgments related to tastes, that's a problem. If you skip the struggle as mentioned, that's a huge red flag. If you start confusing speed with insight, that's a big problem too. The risk inherent in either misusing artificial intelligence or deciding abruptly not to use it out of fear and lack of understanding is multifaceted. It's not necessarily having to do with falling behind creatively, as some people might indicate. It's missing out on a tool that helps you rehearse and improve upon your thinking when you have limited time to do so. For example, in my Study the Great series, where I actually do master copies of great works done by great painters as a means of learning, learning rapidly while doing, not with the intention of copying what they're doing, but the intention is to try and identify what they were aiming at and the approach they took toward getting there. And in the long run, that will help me improve upon my painting skill stack. And in addition to that, find my own unique voice as a painter. Nowadays, we could use AI when studying these great works of art. And we could do so in a way. For example, we're not asking artificial intelligence for authoritative responses to questions that we have. We're using it as a sounding wall. So I might ask questions like, what problems was this artist trying to solve when they designed this composition? What do you think the actual color palette might have been for this artist, given the time frame with which they worked within? And I'll get responses. And again, you have to go through the process of critical analysis. If you get obvious responses or responses that are obviously incorrect, like for example, artificial intelligence suggests a color on the palette that hadn't been invented at the time that the artist was alive in, you know that there's some challenges that you need to consider when taking that feedback, taking account of that feedback. You could ask questions like, what sort of constraints might have shaped this artist's work when they were building this painting? Also, you could ask questions like, what aspects of this painting would somebody who's a fan of postmodern abstract art misunderstand about this painting? See, in my world, I tend to be a fan of the Impressionists and other painters that were actually, painting subject matter from direct observation in most instances. And I'm a big fan of landscape painting. And oftentimes, there is no academic narrative that might be derived from those paintings. So, fans of the postmodern or modern art movement, the abstract paintings that you see in galleries that celebrate modern art, those art patrons might be a little critical of the type of art that I like. So I might use artificial intelligence as a sounding wall to get their perspective as a consideration when I'm looking at a piece of artwork that I'm enjoying. So when I think about the permanent value of artificial intelligence for creatives, while there is a little inkling, a little voice in the back of my mind that says I too should be afraid and scared of artificial intelligence and the potential negative impacts it might have on my life, the life of those of my family, and society as a whole, I also want to try to stay focused on the positives, just like with any new tool, whether it be the advent of electricity and the electrification of our cities and towns and homes, whether it be the development of the automobile. They all had potential negatives that came along with them, but they also had some tremendous positives. So I personally want to be a creative that finds ways to incorporate ethically the potential positives associated with artificial intelligence. So when I think about the permanent value that might be inherent in this new technology, I don't think it's about the output at all. I think it's about our response as creatives to that output. Again, it's going to help us if we approach this the right way to hone our ability to ask effective questions and then think critically about the responses that we get. All in, those will feed into our ability to think better as creatives, looking to thrive in the creative world. Thanks for checking out this video. Please remember to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And check out some of my work on Paint and Draw with Tom, which is another channel that's available for you to check out my actual paintings and drawings. Stay well. Hope to see you again next time.